Ma'am, we received a complaint about trespassing, Bennett said, his voice weary. Can you provide proof of residency? Everything you need is right there. Diane gestured to her scattered belongings. Driver's license showing this address. Property deed. Oh, a membership card. Barbara Caldwell stepped forward, her voice sharp and certain. I'm the HOA president. I know every resident. She's not one of them. Diane turned to face Barbara directly, fighting to keep her voice steady. Miss Caldwell, we've been at 3 HOA meetings together. March, you discussed pool maintenance budgets. April, landscaping contracts. May, security gate repairs. I sit 2 rows behind you. I voted yes on all 3 of your proposals. The words hung in the air. Barbara's face flushed deeper red, but she didn't back down. That's not. Anyone could attend meetings. My identification is right there, Diane repeated, her voice quieter now. Everything is legitimate. Flynn moved toward her scattered belongings, bending down to examine the driver's license. He picked it up carefully, studied it, then looked up at Walsh. Trevor, the address matches. Everything looks valid. Walsh's jaw tightened. Fake IDs exist. She could have stolen someone's identity. These people are sophisticated. These people. The words made Diane's hands curl into fists at her sides. She forced them to relax, forced her breathing to steady. She'd spent her entire career helping sick children, comforting terrified parents, making life or death decisions with calm precision. She could survive this. Call property management, Diane suggested softly. They'll confirm my residency in 30 seconds. Don't tell me how to do my job, Walsh snapped, stepping closer to her. It was a classic intimidation tactic, invading her personal space, trying to make her react. Diane stood her ground, but she didn't step back. She simply met his eyes and waited. Behind them, a woman pulled out her phone and started recording. Diane caught the movement in her peripheral vision, made brief eye contact with the woman. A silent message passed between them. Keep recording. This matters. Walsh made his decision. Turn around. Hands behind your back. Diane's heart dropped. Am I under arrest? What's the charge? Trespassing. Disorderly conduct. I've provided valid identification, Diane said, her voice remarkably steady. I've complied fully. What conduct has been disorderly? Walsh moved behind her, and she heard the metallic clink of handcuffs. You can explain it to the judge. Flynn's eyes went wide. Trevor, she's cooperating. She showed valid ID. This doesn't. I said I'll handle this. Diane could end this right now. She could tell them the truth, reveal what she'd been hiding for 8 months. But if she did, she'd lose everything. 8 months of careful documentation. 8 months of building a case that could change everything. 8 months of living quietly, observing, recording patterns that needed to be exposed. They were giving her exactly what she needed. Irrefutable evidence that the system was broken. She made her decision. Diane turned slowly and placed her hands behind her back. The cuffs clicked shut around her wrists, too tight, deliberately painful. She didn't flinch, didn't cry out, didn't give them the satisfaction of seeing her break. Am I under arrest? She asked again. What is the specific charge? Trespassing and disorderly conduct, Walsh repeated. I've provided valid identification proving I live here, Diane said clearly, her voice carrying. She wanted the woman recording to catch every word. I have complied fully. At no point have I been disorderly. Walsh leaned close, his breath hot against her ear. You can argue with the judge. The woman recording moved closer. Walsh spun toward her. Put that phone away, or you're next. This is public property, the woman said firmly. I have every right to record. Final warning. Bennett finally spoke up, his voice heavy with exhaustion. Trevor, Her ID checks out. We should write her up for resisting, Walsh interrupted. She didn't resist. Flynn protested weakly. Write her up. They paraded Diane past the pool, past her neighbors who watched in silence, past the landscaper who'd installed her garden beds last month, past people who'd seen her at community events, who knew exactly who she was. Not one person spoke up. At the patrol car, Walsh grabbed the back of Diane's head and shoved her into the back seat. Not gently, not with the careful technique they taught at the academy, but with an aggressive push designed to humiliate. Her head hit the doorframe, pain exploding behind her eyes. She still didn't fight back. Inside the car, the vinyl seat stuck to her damp skin. The handcuffs cut into her wrists, restricting circulation. The whole scene was designed to break her, to make her angry, to give them justification for whatever came next. But Diane Harper didn't break. Instead, she cataloged everything. Excessive force, false arrest, deprivation of rights, every federal crime she could name. She memorized badge numbers, noted the body cameras, recorded in her mind exactly how this violation unfolded. Walsh slid into the driver's seat, smirking at her in the rearview mirror. Should have just been respectful. Diane spoke calmly, clearly. Officer Walsh, badge number 3825. For your body camera, I have not resisted. I have complied fully. This arrest is without probable cause. I want that very clear for the record. Walsh's smirk died. The engine started. Diane watched her neighborhood disappear through the window, her home getting smaller in the distance. A countdown had begun that would destroy everything these officers thought they knew. And when the truth finally came out, it would be biblical. Part 3. The station, the Riverside County Police Station, smelled like stale coffee, floor cleaner, and institutional resignation. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as Officer Walsh paraded Diane through the building like a prize he'd won at the county fair. She walked barefoot in her damp swimsuit, hands still cuffed behind her back, her head throbbing where it had struck the car doorframe. Officers looked up from their paperwork, some staring, others smirking. Caught her trespassing at Riverside Estates, Walsh announced to no one in particular. Playing the race card, saying she lives there. Diane's jaw tightened, but she said nothing. Every word would be used against her. Better to stay silent and let them hang themselves. The desk sergeant, a different Bennett than the one at the scene, barely glanced up from his computer. Name? Diane Harper. Address? 42 Lakewood Drive, Riverside Estates. Bennett paused, his fingers hovering over the keyboard. He finally looked up, studying Walsh with an expression that suggested he'd been through too many shifts to be surprised by anything. That's the gated community? Yep, Walsh said confidently. HOA president confirmed she'd never seen her. Did her ID check out? Walsh hesitated just long enough for it to matter. Yeah, but it could be fake. Bennett's expression shifted. 23 years on the force had taught him to recognize political landmines before stepping on them. So you arrested a resident for being at her own community pool? She looked suspicious. Suspicious how? Silence. Bennett sighed, then gestured to another officer. Uncuff her. The metal finally released from Diane's wrists. Circulation returned painfully, blood rushing back into her hands. Red marks were already forming into bruises. She rubbed her wrists gently, not making a scene, just trying to ease the pain. One phone call, Bennett said, pointing toward an ancient payphone bolted to the wall. Walsh hovered 10 feet away, watching, listening. Diane walked to the phone, picked up the receiver, and dialed a number from memory. Not her sister, not a lawyer. Someone else entirely. 3 rings. Montgomery. Diane's voice dropped, measured and deliberate. ASAC, it's Agent Harper. I'm at Riverside County Precinct. Booked under false arrest. Walsh initiated. 2 seconds of silence felt eternal. Are you compromised? The voice on the other end was sharp, professional. Negative. Cover intact. But the operation just accelerated. The August sun blazed over Riverside Estates as Diane Harper stood at her kitchen window, watching the neighborhood settle into its afternoon rhythm. She'd lived at 42 Lakewood Drive for 6 months now, each day feeling like a small victory she wasn't supposed to celebrate too loudly. At 42 years old, Diane had learned to move through the world with careful grace. Her late grandmother's voice still echoed in her mind. Keep your head up, your voice soft, and your receipts organized. It was wisdom born from decades of navigating spaces that weren't built for people who looked like her. She'd bought this house with money saved from 15 years as a pediatric nurse practitioner, plus a modest inheritance when her mother passed. $2.1 million, paid in full. No mortgage, no debt. Just her name on a deed that still felt surreal some mornings. The community pool sparkled in the distance, calling to her after a long shift at the Children's Hospital. She'd attended 3 HOA meetings since moving in, sitting quietly in the back rows, voting yes on every proposal. Pool maintenance, landscaping contracts, security gate repairs. She wanted to be a good neighbor, the kind who caused no trouble. Diane changed into her navy swimsuit, grabbed the monogrammed towel her sister bought her as a housewarming gift, and slipped into sandals. Her leather bag held everything she needed: wallet, phone, keys, a book she'd been meaning to finish. She locked her front door and walked the tree-lined path toward the pool, nodding politely at neighbors who passed without acknowledgement. The pool area was nearly empty when she arrived. Just 2 teenagers on the far end and an elderly man reading under an umbrella. Diane chose a lounge chair, set down her bag, and stepped into the water. It felt like heaven against her skin, cool and clean and hers by every legal right. She floated on her back, eyes closed, letting the stress of the hospital melt away. A 12-hour shift. 3 critical patients. 1 family she'd had to deliver devastating news to. She needed this moment of peace. Excuse me. The voice cut through her tranquility. Diane opened her eyes to see Barbara Caldwell standing at the pool's edge, arms crossed, phone clutched like a weapon. Barbara was the HOA president, always impeccably dressed, always watching everything with sharp, assessing eyes. Diane had voted for every single one of Barbara's proposals. They'd been in the same room 3 times. Yes? Diane stood in the shallow end, water dripping from her shoulders. Do you live here? Barbara's tone wasn't curious. It was accusatory. Diane felt her stomach tighten, that familiar knot of anxiety that came whenever she had to prove she belonged somewhere. Yes, ma'am. 42 Lakewood Drive. I'm the HOA president. Barbara's eyes narrowed. I know every resident. I've never seen you before. The words landed like a slap. Diane's mind raced through the meetings. The time she'd sat just rows away from this woman, raising her hand to vote, participating in discussions. How could Barbara not remember? But Diane knew how. She'd always known how. We've been at 3 meetings together, Diane said gently, trying to keep her voice steady. I sit 2 rows behind you. March, we discussed pool maintenance budgets. April, landscaping contracts. May, security gate repairs. I voted yes on all your proposals. Barbara's face flushed red, but her expression didn't soften. That doesn't mean anything. Anyone could attend meetings. I'm a homeowner here, Diane insisted, pointing toward her bag on the chair. My identification is right there. Driver's license, property deed, HOA membership card. Barbara pulled out her phone, fingers moving quickly. We'll see about that. Diane stood frozen in the water, humiliation burning through her chest. The teenagers had stopped swimming, The elderly man lowered his book. Everyone was watching her now. This moment of public suspicion she'd done nothing to earn. Within 5 minutes, she heard sirens. Her heart sank as a patrol car pulled into the parking lot, followed quickly by another. 2 officers emerged, then 3. Diane recognized the type immediately. The one who walked with too much authority, the younger one who looked nervous, and the older one whose tired eyes said he'd seen this scene play out before. The lead officer, tall with cold eyes and a badge that read Walsh, strode toward the pool with purpose. Diane climbed out of the water slowly, hands visible, movements careful. She'd been taught this choreography long ago. Don't make sudden moves. Don't raise your voice. Don't give them any reason. That's her, Barbara announced, pointing. Officer Walsh's gaze swept over Diane with immediate judgment. She could see it in his eyes, the conclusion he'd already reached, before asking a single question. This was about to get worse before it got better, and Diane Harper, standing barefoot in her swimsuit with water still dripping from her skin, made a decision that would change everything. She would let this play out exactly as it was meant to. She would document every moment, every word, every choice these people made. Because sometimes, the only way to expose darkness was to let it reveal itself completely. Part 2. The arrest officer. Trevor Walsh didn't ask questions. He grabbed Diane's arm, his grip tight enough to make her wince, and pulled her further from the pool. She stumbled on the hot concrete, her bare feet burning, her whole body suddenly feeling exposed and vulnerable. "This your pool?" Walsh's voice dripped with contempt. "Yes, sir," Diane replied, keeping her tone respectful despite the pain shooting through her arm. "I live at 42 Lakewood Drive. My identification is right there in my bag." Walsh released her arm and strode to her leather bag. He dumped the contents onto the concrete with deliberate carelessness. Her wallet split open, credit cards scattering across the ground. Her phone hit the pavement with a sickening crack. The book she'd been reading landed pages down, spine bending. Diane watched, her hands trembling slightly. Stay calm, she told herself. Document everything. Remember every detail. Walsh picked up her driver's license, examined it like it might be counterfeit, then actually ground his boot heel into it against the concrete. "Funny," he said. "I don't see someone like you living in a place like this." The younger officer, whose badge read Flynn, shifted uncomfortably. "Trevor, maybe we should just verify. I'll handle this." Walsh cut him off. The third officer, Sergeant Bennett, stood back with an expression that looked like resignation. Like he'd watched this movie before and knew exactly how it would end, but felt powerless to change the script. AS-Act Denise Montgomery strode through the precinct like she owned it. A black woman in her early 50s, FBI credentials hanging from her neck, power suit immaculate. Behind her walked 2 agents in tactical gear, 2 attorneys carrying briefcases, and a supervisor from the Civil Rights Division. Every cop in the room straightened involuntarily. Montgomery walked directly to Diane's holding cell. Bennett fumbled with the keys, his hands shaking. Finally got the door unlocked. Diane stood. "ASSC Montgomery," she said formally. "Agent Harper." Montgomery assessed her. Orange jumpsuit, bare feet, red marks on her wrists. Her expression hardened to stone. "Status?" "Cover intact until now." Walsh initiated. Caldwell instigated. Montgomery nodded once, then turned to Bennett. "Where are the arresting officers?" "Captain's office, ma'am." "Get them now. I also need surveillance footage from the community pool, body camera footage from all arresting officers, all booking documentation, and the incident report. You have 10 minutes. Bennett practically ran. One of Montgomery's agents handed Diane a bag containing her clothes, shoes, and wallet. Diane changed quickly, while Montgomery's team set up in the booking area, like they were claiming territory. In the captain's office, Burgess looked like he'd aged 10 years. "They want you downstairs." Walsh's hands trembled as he stood. Flynn followed, looking like he might be sick. They descended the stairs in silence, entered the booking area, and froze. Diane stood next to a SSC Montgomery, no longer in the jumpsuit. She wore crisp dark slacks, a professional blouse, leather shoes. Federal credentials were now visible around her neck. Walsh stopped breathing. Diane pulled her badge case from her pocket, opened it slowly, deliberately. The gold shield caught the fluorescent light. Federal Bureau of Investigation. Special Agent Diane Harper, Public Corruption Unit. Flynn's knees buckled. He grabbed the wall for support. Diane's voice, still calm, but now carrying federal authority, filled the space. Officer Trevor Walsh, badge number 3825. Officer Garrett Flynn, badge number 4163. I am Special Agent Diane Harper, FBI. For the past 8 months, I have conducted an undercover investigation into civil rights violations, abuse of authority, and systemic misconduct within the Riverside County Police Department. Walsh tried to speak. Nothing came out. This afternoon's incident, my unlawful arrest, use of excessive force, and detention without probable cause, has been documented and will be included in my official report to the Department of Justice Civil Rights Division. Montgomery stepped forward. Gentlemen, you're not under arrest yet, but as of this moment, you are subjects of a federal investigation. I strongly recommend you contact your union representative. But the badge was only the beginning of their nightmare. The real judgment was still to come. Part 6. The evidence, 20 minutes later. Diane sat at the head of a conference room table. Her table now. Montgomery sat to her right. 2 civil rights attorneys flanked the left side. Captain Burgess looked shell-shocked at the far end. The county executive, hastily summoned, occupied the remaining seat. Diane opened her laptop and projected onto the screen. For 8 months, she began, her voice steady and professional. I've lived as Diane Harper, nurse practitioner. My actual assignment: investigate patterns of discriminatory policing, excessive force, and civil rights violations in this jurisdiction. She clicked. Photos of Walsh appeared. At traffic stops, at the precinct, at community events. Officer Trevor Walsh, 15 years of service. 13 documented complaints, all buried or dismissed by internal affairs. 8 involved racial profiling. 3 involved excessive force. 0 resulted in discipline. Burgess's face turned gray. He was watching his department get autopsied in real time. Diane clicked again. A timeline appeared. April 2024. Walsh stops 3 black teenagers walking home from school. Claims suspicious behavior. No charges. May 2024. Walsh arrests a black nurse leaving her night shift. Claims she matched the description. Charges dropped. June 2024. Walsh conducts an illegal vehicle search on a black attorney. Evidence suppressed. She played body camera footage obtained via federal subpoena. The room watched Walsh escalate situations unnecessarily. Plant evidence during searches, falsify reports. The evidence was damning, systematic, undeniable. One of the civil rights attorneys leaned forward. Agent Harper, how did you become today's target? Barbara Caldwell, HOA president. I've attended 3 meetings in 6 months. She never acknowledged my presence. Today, she sees me at the pool, my community, and immediately calls 911. Another slide appeared. Caldwell's profile. 14 police calls in 2 years. 11 involved people of color. 0 resulted in actual crimes. She weaponizes law enforcement to enforce personal bias. Montgomery interjected. Walsh could have de-escalated. He chose escalation. Worse, he arrested Agent Harper, knowing the ID was legitimate. That's federal criminal conduct. The county executive shifted uncomfortably. Agent Harper, what does the Bureau intend? I'm recommending a consent decree. Federal oversight of this department. Independent review board. Body camera policies with actual teeth. And a complete audit of every arrest Walsh has made in the past 5 years. Murgis opened his mouth to object. Your assurances mean nothing, Captain. Diane cut him off. Walsh had 13 complaints. He's still on patrol. That ends today. Montgomery stood, gathering files. As of this moment, Officer Walsh is suspended pending federal investigation. Officer Flynn is suspended pending investigation. Barbara Caldwell will be interviewed regarding her pattern of false reports. This department is officially under FBI scrutiny. She paused at the door. Agent Harper will remain in her residence as both resident and federal witness. Any retaliation against her will be considered felony obstruction of justice. Diane added quietly, I'll be at the pool tomorrow. My pool? Swimming like every other resident. The room emptied slowly, everyone stunned by what had just unfolded. Montgomery and Diane stood alone. Montgomery touched her shoulder gently. You okay? Diane exhaled, 8 months of tension releasing. I will be. What you did today letting them arrest you. Building the perfect case that took courage. Or faith, Diane said softly. That the system can still work sometimes. That evening, Diane's sister Patricia waited at her house. She'd driven over the moment she saw the news, still in her work clothes from the school where she taught 5th grade. 8 months you pretended, Patricia said, her voice caught between pride and fury. Today I watched my sister get arrested on someone's Instagram story. Diane sat heavily on her couch. I couldn't tell you. Operational security. I know the rules. Patricia's voice cracked. But Maya saw it. She's 13. She watched her mother handcuffed and humiliated. Do you know what that does to a child? Diane's composure broke. That's exactly why I had to do this. So when she's 20, 30, 40, maybe she won't watch her own children go through it. Patricia traced the bruises on Diane's wrists with gentle fingers. Promise me something. Remember, you're not just an agent. You're a mother and a sister. We need you alive, not heroic. I promise. Upstairs, Maya's door opened. She descended slowly, her eyes red from crying. Mom, Maya's voice trembled. If you didn't have your badge, would you still be in jail? The question broke Diane because the answer was probably yes. That's why I do this job, sweetheart, she said instead. So people without badges don't have to be scared. So the rules apply equally, even to police. Did you arrest the bad cop? Then Diane took the stand. Agent Harper, the prosecutor began. Did Officer Walsh have probable cause to arrest you? No. Did you resist in any way? No. I complied fully with every instruction. What motivated Officer Walsh's actions? Diane took a breath. Bias, unchecked authority, and the belief, reinforced by years of departmental protection, that he'd face no consequences for violating citizens' rights. On cross-examination, the defense attorney tried to rattle her. Agent Harper, isn't it true you were playing the victim by not immediately identifying yourself as a federal agent? Diane's response was devastating. I was documenting what millions of Americans without federal credentials experience daily. If the only way to avoid unlawful arrest is to have FBI authority, we don't have equal justice. We have a two-tiered system based on power, not law. Several jurors nodded. Day 3. The collapse, the defense called Walsh to the stand. Against his attorney's advice, Walsh insisted on testifying. He thought he could explain himself, make the jury understand. He was wrong. Officer Walsh, the prosecutor began. When you saw Agent Harper at the pool, what was your first thought? That she looked suspicious. What specifically was suspicious? Her swimsuit? Her towel? Her compliance with every rule? Walsh shifted uncomfortably. She just didn't look like she belonged there. Because she's black. No, it wasn't about race. Then what? She had valid identification proving residency. She was using a pool she pays dues to maintain. She was in her own neighborhood. So what specifically made you decide she didn't belong? Walsh opened his mouth, closed it, tried again. I don't know. It was the only honest thing he said all day. And it condemned him completely. The verdict 3 hours later, the jury returned. The foreperson stood. On the charge of deprivation of rights under color of law, we find the defendant guilty. Walsh crumpled forward. His mother, sitting in the gallery, sobbed loudly. Diane felt Maya squeeze her hand. She looked down at her daughter, whose eyes were filled with tears, not of sadness, but of relief. Sentencing 2 weeks later. Judge Fisher removed her glasses and addressed Walsh directly. Mr. Walsh, you were given a badge and a gun. You were entrusted with extraordinary authority over citizens' lives. You were sworn to protect and serve without prejudice. Instead, you weaponized that authority against the very people you were supposed to protect. She paused, letting the words settle. Your actions didn't just harm Agent Harper. They undermined public trust in every honorable officer doing this job with integrity. They damaged the fabric of community safety. They violated the fundamental principles of equal justice under law. This court sentences you to 8 years in federal prison, followed by 3 years supervised release. You are permanently barred from law enforcement employment. You will participate in racial bias counseling as a condition of release. Walsh was let out in handcuffs, the same handcuffs he'd put on Diane 6 months earlier. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. Diane made a brief statement, Maya and Patricia standing beside her. Today, justice was served. But one conviction doesn't fix a broken system. The real work reforming departments, changing culture, holding leadership accountable, the work continues every single day. This verdict is one step. We need 10,000 more. A reporter called out, Agent Harper, what do you want people to take from this? Diane thought carefully before answering. I want people to understand that accountability isn't optional. That badges don't grant immunity from the law. That every person, regardless of color, deserves to exist in their own spaces without fear or suspicion. And most importantly, I want people to know that change is possible. It's hard. It's slow. But it's possible. She looked down at Maya, who was beaming with pride. My daughter shouldn't have to grow up afraid of the people sworn to protect her. No child should. That's what this fight is about. Not revenge. Not hatred. Just equal justice. Just dignity. Just the right to swim in your own pool without someone questioning whether you belong there. 1 year later, the ripple effects of Walsh's conviction spread far beyond Riverside County. His case became required viewing at police academies in 38 states. The Department of Justice used it as the foundation for new federal guidelines on bias-based policing. Diane was promoted to Assistant Special Agent in charge, leading a national task force on police reform. In 18 months, her unit investigated 23 departments, secured 9 consent decrees, trained 12,000 officers, and transformed the conversation around accountability. But the work that mattered most happened quietly. Riverside Estates transformed. The new HOA board partnered with the local NAACP for quarterly community dialogues. They created mentorship programs pairing longtime residents with new families of color. Property values increased 15% as the community gained a reputation for genuine inclusivity. Every Sunday, Diane still swam at that pool. Now neighbors waved. Some apologized for their previous silence. Some swam alongside her. Maya brought friends, a diverse group of teenagers who saw the pool as just a pool, not a battleground. One Sunday afternoon, as Diane floated peacefully in the water, an elderly white neighbor approached. "Agent Harper," he said, "my grandson is considering law enforcement. Would you be willing to talk with him? Help him understand what the badge really means." Diane's first instinct was to say no. Privacy, low profile, boundaries. But then she thought about all the officers who needed better role models, better training, better understanding of what justice truly required. "Have him call me," she said. Later that evening, Diane sat on her back porch with Patricia and Maya. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. "Mom," Maya said suddenly, "was it worth it? Everything that happened to you, to us?" Diane thought carefully before answering. "Sweetheart, sometimes doing the right thing costs us something. Sometimes it costs us a lot. But if we only do what's comfortable, what's easy, nothing ever changes. People keep getting hurt unnecessarily." She pulled Maya close. "The question isn't whether fighting for justice is comfortable. The question is whether it's necessary. So yes, it was worth it. Ask me in 20 years, when you have children of your own, and they can swim in any pool they want, walk any street they choose, exist in any space without anyone questioning whether they belong there based on skin color." Diane's voice was soft but certain. "Then I'll know definitively if the price we paid was worth it." Maya hugged her fiercely. "I think it already is, Mom. I really think it already is." As darkness fell and stars began to appear, Diane Harper sat with the people she loved most, knowing that somewhere out there, someone she'd never meet was swimming in their own pool without fear, walking their own street without suspicion, living their own life with dignity intact. One person couldn't change the world overnight, but one person could start. One person could stand up, speak truth, demand better, and refuse to accept injustice as inevitable. The work would never be finished. There would always be more departments to investigate, more systems to reform, more hearts and minds to change. But tonight, in this moment, Diane Harper was simply a woman who'd fought for justice, and one not just for herself, for everyone. And that was worth everything. The E&D if Agent Harper's story moved you. Remember, change doesn't happen through silence. It happens when ordinary people decide that justice matters more than comfort, that truth matters more than convenience, and that every person deserves dignity regardless of the color of their skin. Subscribe for more stories where courage defeats injustice. And remember, sometimes the most powerful revolutions begin with one person refusing to accept that things will never change. Not yet. But it will. Maya hugged her tight. Good. He was mean to you. Diane held her daughter close, feeling the weight of everything she'd done and everything still to come. The fight wasn't over. It was just beginning. But tonight, she had her family. She had the truth on her side. And tomorrow, she'd go back to that pool, because it was hers. And no one would ever make her feel like it wasn't again. Part 7. The Reckoning. 3 days later, Riverside Estates held an emergency HOA meeting. 200 residents packed the community center, the room dividing like a fault line. Some people looked ashamed. Others looked defiant. Everyone looked uncomfortable. Barbara Caldwell sat in the front row, her designer clothes immaculate, her expression rigid. She'd hired a crisis PR firm within 6 hours of the news breaking, spending $20,000 on advice that ultimately proved worthless. Diane stood at the front of the room, alongside the HOA board. She wore simple slacks and a blouse, her federal credentials visible but not aggressive. She wasn't here to intimidate. She was here to speak truth. A white resident stood first. "This is being blown out of proportion. Barbara made a mistake. We all make mistakes." Diane's voice was calm when she responded. Sir, this wasn't a mistake. It was a pattern. I was number 11. 11 times Miss Caldwell called police on people of color in this community. White residents? 0 calls. That's not a mistake. That's discrimination. An elderly black woman rose, her voice shaking with emotion. I've lived here 15 years. Security has stopped me 5 times, asking if I belong here. My white neighbors? Never once. We stayed quiet because what choice did we have? Now someone with power is speaking up. Thank God. The murmurs in the room shifted. Another resident spoke. I didn't notice. I should have, but I didn't. What can we do now? Notice from now on, Diane said simply. Speak up. Use your voice. Because not everyone has a federal badge to protect them. The HOA board called for a vote. Barbara Caldwell was removed as president. A new non-discrimination policy was adopted. Mandatory community dialogue sessions were scheduled. 3 new board members were elected, all people of color. After the meeting, a white resident approached Diane. I'm ashamed I didn't see what was happening. I thought we were a welcoming community. You can be, Diane said. But it takes work. It takes people speaking up when they see something wrong, even when it's uncomfortable. The man nodded, his eyes filled with genuine remorse. I'll do better. That's all anyone can ask. 1 week later, at the FBI field office, Diane reviewed her full investigation with Montgomery and the civil rights supervisor. Walsh is the crown jewel, Diane explained, pulling up files on the screen. But he's not alone. 4 other officers show similar patterns. 2 supervisors buried complaints. The entire internal affairs process was designed to protect officers, not investigate them. The supervisor nodded. We're pursuing a consent decree retry sh continue. Federal oversight, minimum 5 years. It's not enough, Diane said quietly. It's a start, Montgomery replied. The supervisor pulled up new files. Your work here is done, but we have 3 other departments showing similar patterns. Cleveland, Phoenix, Atlanta. We're forming a task force. National scope. We want you to lead it. Diane thought of Patricia's words. You're not just an agent. You're a mother. But she also thought of every person who couldn't flash a badge. Every citizen experiencing this nightmare without recourse. I'm in, she said. But I need one thing. Name it. Walsh's trial. I want to testify. I want to look him in the eye when justice gets served. Montgomery smiled. Wouldn't have it any other way. That night, Diane floated in the same pool where everything had started. But it felt different now. Lighter somehow. A neighbor waved as he arrived with his family. Another joined her in the water, swimming laps. A third asked about her day, genuine interest in his voice. Small victories. Invisible progress. But progress nonetheless. Diane thought about the people she'd never meet. The ones who wouldn't be pulled over unjustly because an officer had watched the training video her case inspired. The ones who wouldn't be arrested because a department implemented real reforms. The ones who would swim in their own pools without fear. That was the real work. The invisible victories. The moments that didn't happen because systems changed. Walsh's trial was coming. And it would be devastating for him. But tonight, Diane Harper was just a woman swimming in her own pool. In her own neighborhood, without fear. And that, she thought as she floated under the stars, was worth everything. Part 8. Justice served 6 months later. The federal courthouse in downtown Riverside was packed beyond capacity. Media filled the overflow rooms. Community members lined the hallways. Everyone wanted to witness this reckoning. Officer Trevor Walsh sat at the defense table in an ill-fitting suit, his face gaunt. 6 months of legal hell had aged him a decade. His attorney was a public defender. The union had refused to, fund his defense once the evidence became public. Diane sat in the third row, her federal credentials visible. She'd taken leave specifically for this trial. Maya sat beside her, holding her hand. Patricia was on her other side. "You don't have to watch this, baby," Diane whispered to her daughter. "Yes, I do," Maya said firmly. "I need to see that bad people get consequences, even when they have badges." Federal Judge Lorraine Fisher, a black woman in her late 60s with a legendary reputation for fairness, presided. She reviewed the charges with clinical precision. "Trevor Walsh, you are charged with deprivation of rights under color of law, specifically false arrest, excessive force, and violation of 4th and 14th Amendment protections. How do you plead?" Walsh's attorney stood. "Not guilty, Your Honor." The trial lasted 3 days. The evidence was overwhelming. Day 1. The prosecution's case body camera footage played on monitors throughout the courtroom. The gallery watched Walsh yank Diane from the water, dump her belongings, grind his boot into her driver's license, shove her into the patrol car. The audio was damning. Walsh's voice should have just been respectful. Diane's voice, "Officer Walsh, badge number 3825. I have not resisted. This arrest is without probable cause." The jury, 7 white, 3 black, 2 Latino, watched in complete silence. An FBI statistician testified next. Officer Walsh demonstrated a clear discriminatory enforcement pattern. Of 89 arrests over 3 years, 71 involved people of color. District demographics show 40% people of color. This disparity cannot be explained by chance. An expert witness from Georgetown University elaborated. "This represents systematic racial targeting. The statistical probability of this occurring randomly is less than 0.001%. Day 2. The victims. The prosecution called 5 previous victims of Walsh's misconduct. Each told similar stories. Stopped without cause. Treated aggressively. Charges dropped or dismissed. A Latina nurse, 60 years old, broke down on the stand. "He told me I looked like a drug dealer," she testified, her voice cracking. "I was wearing scrubs with my hospital ID visible. I just finished 12 hours in the ICU saving lives. He made me sit on the curb for 90 minutes while he searched my car. Found nothing. Never apologized." Several jurors leaned forward, visibly moved. "Do they know?" "Not yet. Keep it that way until I arrive. Document everything." The voice softened slightly. "Diane, are you okay?" It was the first time anyone had asked. Diane exhaled slowly, feeling the weight of 8 months pressing down on her shoulders. "I will be when this is finished." 30 minutes. "Don't reveal until I'm physically present." "Understood." She hung up. Walsh was still watching, his expression smug. "Lawyer?" Something like that. They led her to a holding cell. 10 minutes later, Diane sat on a cold metal bench alongside 4 other people. 1 woman sleeping off something. 2 men staring at nothing. 1 watching Diane with recognition flickering in his eyes. "Hey," he whispered. "I've seen you. You're that nurse from Riverside, right? Big house on Lakewood?" Diane nodded once. "Damn," he breathed. "They really arrested you for what?" "Swimming while black." The man laughed bitterly. "Same story, different day. You got a good lawyer?" "Better," Diane said softly, her smile faint and dangerous. She leaned back against the concrete wall, closed her eyes, and thought about her daughter, Maya, who was 13 years old and asking questions Diane couldn't answer yet. Questions about why Molly had to pretend to be someone else for work. Why she couldn't tell anyone what she really did. "So people like you don't have to be scared," Diane had told her. "So the rules apply equally, even to police." She thought about every person who couldn't make the phone call she just made. Every citizen who experienced this nightmare without recourse. Her neighbors. Her patients' families. The vulnerable. This was why she did this work. Not for herself. For them. Diane opened her eyes and checked the clock on the wall. 23 minutes since her call. 23 minutes until everyone in this building learned that the woman they'd humiliated had been hunting them for 8 months. And when the truth dropped, careers would explode like grenades. Part 4. The interrogation. 15 minutes later. Officer Walsh entered the interrogation room alone. Protocol said he should have a partner present. But Walsh had never been big on following rules that inconvenienced him. He slapped a folder on the metal table and sat down across from Diane with the confidence of a man who'd never faced real consequences for his actions. Diane now wore an issued orange jumpsuit, her swimsuit and belongings stored somewhere in evidence. She sat with her hands folded on the table, her expression calm, giving nothing away. Let's talk about how you really got into Riverside Estates, Walsh said, leaning back until his chair creaked. Diane stayed silent. See, I've been doing this 12 years, Walsh continued. I know when someone's running a con. Identity theft, fraud. What's your angle? I bought my house, Diane said simply. $2.1 million cash last December. Walsh laughed. Right. And where does someone like you get that kind of money? Someone like you. Diane's expression didn't change, but she filed the phrase away in her mental documentation. Every word mattered. Every assumption revealed something. Officer Walsh, she said quietly. How many black residents live in Riverside Estates? What's that got to do with anything? Humor me. Walsh's jaw worked. I don't keep track of demographics. 7 families out of 230 homes, Diane said. 3%. I'm number 7. Her tone stayed surgical, precise. You've worked this area for 5 years. Have you ever been called to the pool for a white resident? Silence. Ever arrested a white homeowner for swimming in their own community? That's not. Ever handcuffed a white person based solely on an HOA president's suspicion? Walsh stood abruptly, his chair scraping against concrete. You think you're smart, talking like a lawyer, throwing around statistics. Doesn't change the fact that you're sitting in that jumpsuit right now. What's that supposed to mean? Diane looked directly at him, through him really. It means every action has consequences. Every choice creates ripples. Your choices today will define your tomorrow. Is that a threat? It's a fact. Walsh's hand hovered near his radio, uncertainty flickering across his features. He was used to intimidation working, used to people breaking down, confessing, begging. Diane did none of those things. She simply sat there, calm and patient, like she was waiting for something inevitable. The door opened. Sergeant Bennett stuck his head in, his face pale. Walsh, Captain wants you now. Something in Bennett's tone made Walsh's confidence crack. It was a frequency only cops recognized, the one that meant you're in serious trouble. Walsh stared at Diane, suspicion finally dawning in his eyes. Who are you? Diane smiled, but said nothing. Walsh exited quickly, leaving her alone in the interrogation room. She looked up at the two-way mirror, knowing someone was watching from the other side. She checked the clock on the wall. 20-8 minutes since her phone call. 2 minutes until ASAC Montgomery arrived. 2 minutes until this entire station learned that the woman they'd arrested, humiliated, and paraded through their building wasn't just a random black woman at the wrong pool. She was the federal agent who'd been investigating them for 8 months, and they'd just given her everything she needed. Diane allowed herself a small, cold smile. Checkmate. Part 5. The revelation behind closed doors in Captain Stephen Burgess's office. The temperature had dropped 20 degrees. Walsh entered with Flynn trailing behind him, both men sensing something catastrophically wrong. "Close the door," Captain Burgess said quietly, not looking up from his computer screen. Walsh did. "Cap, the woman from the pool is full of sit down." The tone stopped Walsh mid-sentence. Both officers sat. Burgess spun his monitor around so they could see. "In the last 15 minutes, I received 3 phone calls. First, the mayor's office. Second, the county executive. Third, someone from the Department of Justice." Flynn's face drained of color. "All 3 calls," Burgess continued, his voice tight, "were about Diane Harper." Walsh tried to maintain his composure. "Sir, we responded to a legitimate complaint." The HOA president said, "Shut up and listen." Burgess pulled up records on his screen. Diane Harper. Age 42. Address confirmed. 42 Lakewood Drive. Purchased December 2024 for $2.1 million. Paid in full. 0 criminal record. Not even a parking ticket. The HOA president said she'd never. "I don't care what a civilian said." Burgess's voice rose. "You arrested a woman for living in her own neighborhood." Walsh's confidence was cracking now. "This isn't how it usually works," he said weakly. "Usually, the department circled wagons. Usually, they protected their own." But Burgess was sweating. His hands were shaking. "Do you know who Diane Harper is?" Burgess asked. "Some nurse," Walsh said. "Maybe a doctor." That's her cover story. The word cover landed like a bomb in the small office. "Harper's employment record is flagged at the federal level," Burgess continued, rubbing his face. "I can't access details without security clearance I don't have. But whoever she is, she's connected high enough that the Deputy Attorney General's office is personally monitoring her arrest." Walsh's stomach dropped. "Federal, like ... FBI? The system won't tell me. It just says classified employment, federal jurisdiction." Burgess stood, began pacing. "But I can tell you this. Normal citizens don't have the Deputy AG making phone calls within 20 minutes of booking." Flynn spoke for the first time, his voice shaking. "Trevor, I told you something fell off." "Not now," Walsh snapped. Burgess pointed at Walsh. "You will write a detailed report of every action you took, every word you said. Document the HOA president's exact statements. And pray that whatever federal scrutiny lands on this department doesn't end both your careers." A knock at the door. Bennett cracked it open, his expression grim. "Captain, federal agent here. Assistant Special Agent in charge, Denise Montgomery, FBI. She's asking for Diane Harper." The office went completely silent. "She brought attorneys," Bennett added quietly. "And someone from the Civil Rights Division." Burgess's voice came out hollow. "Show her to holding." Walsh's hands started trembling. 30 feet away, Diane heard footsteps approaching that would change everything.